What if, beneath the polished marble floors of a billion-dollar corporation's grand lobby, while 200 investors held their breath in stunned silence, a soft-spoken 26-year-old nanny performed something so unexpected, so quietly powerful, that even the most seasoned neuroscientists couldn't explain it? What if, in just 4 minutes and 22 seconds, she didn't just calm a child, she rewired an empire's understanding of intelligence, compassion, and the very soul of leadership? And what if this young woman, earning barely $15 an hour and often overlooked by the world, carried within her a gift, finely honed through heartbreak and humility, that outshined the most prestigious MBAs and elite specialists combined? This is not fiction. This is the story of Mia Sanders, a story that redefined what it means to be intelligent, what it means to lead, and most of all, what it means to truly connect. It all began not in a boardroom, not on a stage, but in a moment so tender it cracked open the heart of a powerful CEO, not just saving his bond with his autistic son, but transforming how he ran his company and why. Before we step into Mia's world, a quiet but blazing world of insight and devotion, let me tell you this. Every click of support helps carry stories like hers into places where they matter most. Into homes, into hearts, into boardrooms that need to hear them. If you believe in unseen heroes and in the power of listening deeper, thank you for being here. Now, settle in. This story doesn't unfold in a straight line. It rises and falls like breath, because it is breath, presence, and patience that lie at the center of everything you're about to witness. For 26 years, Mia observed, not for applause, but out of necessity, out of a relentless, aching love for someone the world didn't know how to love back. Her little brother, diagnosed with autism when he was just 2, became both her greatest teacher and her fiercest reason to keep learning. Over nearly a decade, Mia's quiet devotion became its own kind of science, the science of attunement, the language of nonverbal empathy, the medicine of simply not walking away. Harvard would later call this story the leadership revolution no one saw coming. Forbes would write about its legacy in boardroom culture. But for Ethan Clark, the 7-year-old boy whose meltdown sparked this miracle, none of that mattered. What mattered was that Mia made his world feel safe, not fixed, understood, not judged, loved, not labeled. So let's go back to where it all began. Not in wealth, not in privilege, but in a modest studio apartment tucked into Chicago's South Side. The early morning sun filters through gauzy curtains, casting a soft light over a cramped desk buried in child psychology textbooks. Each one bristles with neon sticky notes and handwritten annotations in fine, deliberate script. Mia sits cross-legged on her unmade bed, writing in a worn-out blue notebook, the same one she's kept since the day Donnie was diagnosed. Today's entry, labeled with quiet precision, Day 847. Tommy R. responded to deep pressure breathing. Duration 3 minutes 22 seconds. Gentle humming at 60 BPM, most effective. Lights dimmed 40%. Background noise below 45 dB. Eye contact increased from 0% to 15%. These aren't notes, they're prayers, translated into data. Rituals, attempts to make sense of a reality shaped by sound, by sensation, by the unseen. Every page carries the weight of trial, of error, of fierce, aching hope. Mia isn't chasing a cure. She's chasing understanding. This was never about theory. It was about watching your little brother crumple under the brightness of supermarket lights, about holding him through screams the neighbors didn't understand, about teaching herself to read the flicker of his hands like a poet reads meaning into silence. On her nightstand sits a photograph of Mia at 18, arms protectively wrapped around a grinning 10-year-old boy with wide-set eyes and an irrepressible smile. Danny's hands flutter in the picture, stimming, some would say, But to Mia, those movements were rich with meaning. A heartbeat, a signal, a story only a sister could decipher. Beside the photo lies a small collection of objects, a smooth river stone Danny gave her when he was 12, saying it feels like calm. A folded program from her college graduation, where Danny, against all odds, gave a speech about his sister's seeing heart, and a hospital bracelet from 2 years ago, the night of his first major seizure, a reminder of how fragile clarity can be, how fleeting connection sometimes is. This is where Mia's story begins, not in the grandeur of finance or the strategies of clinical science, but in the quiet, in the sacrifice, in the sanctuary she created, not to change her brother, but to meet him exactly where he was. And in doing so, she would one day teach a room full of powerful people that true leadership doesn't look like dominance. It looks like listening. Between understanding and being understood lies a space so fragile, so easily missed, that only those who've lived on both sides of it can truly bridge the gap. Mia Sanders is one of those rare few. As a part-time nanny working toward her master's in child psychology, she carries a gift shaped not in classrooms, but in the intimate trenches of real-life love and struggle. Her gift isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It listens. It notices. It sees the frightened child behind the behavior others label as difficult. Her morning routine is less about habit than intention, a sacred rhythm that grounds her before stepping into the unpredictable worlds of the children she serves. She steeps her Earl Grey tea for exactly 3 minutes. Toast spread with almond butter sliced diagonally. A small but sacred tribute to Danny, her younger brother, who once explained that diagonals made food feel calmer to him. It's these tiny rituals, quiet nods to her brother's worldview, that have taught Mia that structure doesn't imprison. It comforts, it orients, it makes life feel possible when everything else is too loud. Each motion she makes, pouring tea, brushing lint from her cardigan, is deliberate, imbued with the same quiet focus she brings to every child's interaction. The mirror reflects a woman who tends to look down when spoken to, who instinctively steps backward upon entering a room. But beneath the surface shyness lies a fierce and unshakable composure. Her hands, though delicate, never tremble in the presence of distress. Her eyes, soft and perceptive, notice micro-expressions, the almost invisible flickers of emotion that others miss entirely. Her voice, naturally adaptive, shifts in tone and rhythm, not to command attention, but to create safety. Her apartment mirrors this in-between life she leads, part scientist, part soul tether. Textbooks on applied behavior analysis are crammed next to sensory toys and communication boards. Research articles on neurodiversity sit side by side with crayon drawings and handwritten notes from families whose children she's helped in ways the traditional systems never could. Mia doesn't just straddle two worlds, she braids them together. But today, her steady hands tremble slightly. She double-checks the address on her phone, 1247 Lakeshore Drive, the Clark family, an emergency placement. The agency had called just before midnight. The regular nanny had fallen ill. Somehow, Mia had been bumped to the top of the list. What she doesn't yet know is that this wasn't a coincidence. Dolores King, the Clark family's longtime housekeeper, had personally requested Mia. After witnessing the profound impact Mia had on a previous family, the Petersons, where conventional therapies had failed, but a boy had found his voice under Mia's care. Dolores had told the agency director, "That girl doesn't just work with autistic kids. She translates their language. She moves between worlds." With a calm that masks her nerves, Mia begins her prep. She reviews her notes on sensory integration strategies. She packs her emergency toolkit: noise-canceling headphones, textured stress balls, fidget spinners, chewy necklaces, and finally, the most important item of all, a worn index card, created by Danny during her first year of grad school. In his slow, careful handwriting, it reads, Mia's superpowers. Sees feelings before words. Knows when quiet is louder than talking. Makes scared kids feel safe. Remembers that different doesn't mean wrong. Clutching the card like armor, she adjusts her cardigan, tucks her notes into her canvas bag, and whispers the same prayer her mother once taught her. Let me be what this child needs today. She's whispered it before meeting every child, but today the universe is listening more intently than ever. Towering 47 stories above Chicago's skyline, FinTech Labs headquarters gleams like a monument to ambition. Its glass exterior catches the morning light in sharp reflections, a perfect symbol of its CEO, Jonathan Clark. Brilliant, calculated, visionary. Today's event, Family Day, is designed to display the company's people-first culture to a gallery of high-stakes investors. Every detail, from the curated snacks to the speech schedule, has been crafted to impress. The marble-lined lobby hums with activity. 200 families gather in tailored joy, their voices ricocheting off grand surfaces not built for comfort, but for prestige. To the average visitor, the event looks warm, even charming. But to Mia, who slips quietly through the side entrance, thrifted blazer clashing with the glossy sheen of the corporate crowd, it's a sensory battleground. Her trained mind catalogs the danger. Flickering LED lights, imperceptible to most, but relentless for a hypersensitive brain. Polished floors that multiply every footstep into jarring echoes. Vaulted ceilings that stretch sound into chaos. Her heart tightens, and then she sees him. Expectancy at this early entry into maturity. Although other children scream at a towering abstract sculpture, hands clamped tightly over his ears, while other children scream and race in joy, Ethan rocks gently, shoulders hunched, legs pulled into his chest. He's found the one acoustic pocket of relative silence in a space engineered for spectacle. His eyes, when she catches brief glimpses, are fixated on the marble veining beneath him, following a pattern only he seems to see. It's a coping mechanism, a refuge. 30 feet away, his father, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that likely costs more than Mia's monthly rent, charms a group of investors. Jonathan Clark, the innovation golden boy, a man who can forecast market trends 3 quarters in advance, but stands blind to the silent storm unfolding at his son's feet. Mia watches the heartbreaking disconnect, a father adored by shareholders, yet estranged from the one relationship that needs him most. Jonathan glances occasionally at Ethan, a flicker of worry crossing his expression, but his attention snaps back quickly to his polished pitch. He's tethered to his role, trapped in expectations louder than love. Around them, the lobby bustles with beautiful filtered families. Lawyers, surgeons, tech giants, children giggling, posing for photos, performing social ease like second nature. To them, the sensory overload is thrilling, not threatening. At this point, declare, enquab reretu, che. But Mia sees it all differently. She approaches Ethan with the precision of a field medic, every step calibrated. She observes the rise and fall of his breath, too quick, too shallow, his muscles taut with flight response, his fingers tapping a precise rhythm against his temple, not random but patterned, a Morse code of distress. And in that instant, Mia doesn't just see a boy, she sees her brother. She sees Nanny, rocking beneath cafeteria tables, tracing cracks in tile floors to escape the overwhelm. And she knows, deep in her bones, that this moment will require everything she's ever learned, everything she's ever felt, and every ounce of her presence. Because Ethan isn't just overwhelmed, he's drowning. And she is the only person in this glittering tower who sees the water. Ethan's fingers tapped a pattern against his temple, precise, metronomic, synchronized not to chaos, but to his heartbeat. It was a self-soothing code, a lifeline of rhythm trying desperately to stabilize his overloaded nervous system. Mia recognized it instantly. She didn't need to speak or approach. She didn't even need to think. Her training, her empathy, her lifetime of observing her brother Danny had already taught her what to do. She knelt slowly, 6 feet away, just outside his sensory boundary. Not a single movement wasted, not a sound made. She knew the danger of doing too much too soon. That space around Ethan wasn't empty, it was sacred. A protective perimeter he'd built to keep the world out. From her canvas bag, Mia drew out her worn blue notebook and a pencil. Without looking directly at him, she began to draw. Simple, fluid lines, echoes of his movements, curves that mirrored the sway of his body, the shape of his tension, the pattern of his breath. No words, no eye contact, just presence. A soft, steady presence so attuned, so respectful of his autonomy, that even the nearby security guards, trained to spot disruption, walked past her without a second glance. Around them, the crowd continued to buzz. Parents chatting, children laughing, investors shaking hands under the looming sculpture that towered over Ethan like a silent judge. But none of them noticed that a masterclass in trauma-informed support was quietly unfolding right there on the marble floor. None, except Ethan. Through the shield of his arms, he began to peek at Mia's sketchbook. The lines intrigued him. They weren't random. They mirrored him, matched him. They told him he was seen without demanding anything in return. Curiosity flickered like a fragile candle flame inside his storm of sensory overwhelm. Then came the rupture. A sound technician, in a rush to prepare for the afternoon presentation, tested the speaker system. Far too early and far too loud. A screech of audio feedback erupted from the ceiling, sharp, piercing, slicing through the ambient noise like a knife through silk. For most people in the lobby it was annoying, startling, maybe. They winced, covered their ears, grumbled briefly about the tech glitch, and moved on. For Ethan, it was catastrophic. His nervous system, already frayed, interpreted the sound not as discomfort, but as danger. Real, primal, existential danger. The kind that triggers every cell in your body to either flee or fight. His careful equilibrium shattered. Excellence, Jace, St. P. He didn't just flinch. He collapsed. Like a wave crashing down, Ethan's small frame hit the marble floor with heartbreaking force. Not a seizure, but a full-body shutdown. Legs kicking, arms flailing, mouth wide open in a soundless scream. He wasn't throwing a tantrum. He was drowning in stimulus. The marble beneath him wasn't just cold, it was unforgiving. The sound wasn't just loud, it was a weapon. Instantly, the polished lobby descended into chaos. Parents pulled their children away, confused and frightened. Security guards responded like to a threat, radios buzzing, forming tight circles. The PR team, polished and composed in matching navy blazers, sprang into silent protocol, whispering urgent damage control strategies, all while glancing nervously at the investor's reaction. Jonathan Clark, CEO, strategist, empire builder, pushed through the crowd like a man possessed, but when he reached Ethan, he froze. His face wore the tortured expression of a father who has everything except the key to reaching his son. "Ethan, buddy, you're okay," he said, his voice calm, practiced, commanding, the same voice that had guided billion-dollar acquisitions. But here, in front of his son, it sounded hollow, misaligned. He reached forward, then stopped. He knew. Touch in this state could burn instead of soothe. So he stood helplessly, hands shaking, jaw clenched, paralyzed by the realization that his love alone wasn't enough. Phones emerged, a sea of screens. The instinct to document outweighed the instinct to help. Whispers escalated. "Call 911, clear the area, CEO's son." Each sentence slicing Jonathan's heart wider. Ethan's meltdown worsened. His fists pounded the floor, his body thrashing as if escaping monsters no one else could see. His breathing became ragged, like someone trapped underwater. And then, without announcement, without permission, Mia moved. She didn't look to security. She didn't ask Jonathan. She didn't explain herself to the crowd. She simply stepped into the circle, kneeling beside Ethan. Mia didn't speak. She didn't rush. She breathed. 1, 2, 3, 4, she whispered. Out. 2, 3, 4. Her breath was calm, steady, predictable. Her voice, barely audible, cut through the chaos, not with volume but with rhythm. A lighthouse in a fog of panic. Her arms formed a loose ring around Ethan, not touching him, but creating a boundary. What Danny had once called a safety bubble. Not confinement. Not control. Just safe space. And then the impossible began to happen. Ethan's thrashing slowed, not because he was restrained, not because someone shouted him down, but because something deep inside him recognized the pattern Mia offered. Her breath, her voice, her presence. His nervous system, which had spiraled into terror, began, miraculously, to synchronize with hers. One breath, then another, and another. The crowd, moments ago filled with movement and mutters, fell into a silence so complete it felt sacred. 200 people watched in awe as a child's storm was calmed not by force, but by someone daring to meet him exactly where he was. 4 counts in, Mia whispered again, gentler now. 4 counts out. Your body is safe. Your mind is safe. I'm here until you're ready. For the first time in minutes, Ethan opened his eyes. Just a sliver, but they found Mia's. Not because she asked, but because she'd earned it. Turning back to him, Chris asked, I scheduled that bone tuck, not with noise, but with love. As the moment softened, the crowd held its breath. No one moved. No one dared to interrupt. Then, quietly, a figure stepped forward from the edge of the circle. Mrs. Dolores King. In her 60s, dignified and unshaken, she moved with the grace of someone who had raised generations of children, not by taming them, but by understanding them. In her hands, a small paper cup of water. Her smile, gentle and knowing. Her presence, like a grandmother's lullaby. There we are, sweetheart, she murmured to Ethan, not pushing, not coaxing, just offering. She knew, as Mia did, that healing can't be rushed, that dignity begins with letting children lead, that miracles often look like small moments that no one was trained to see. But Mia saw, because Mia was that child once, and now she was the bridge. There we are, sweetheart, Mrs. King murmurs, her voice threading through the tension like a lullaby only some hearts are trained to hear. It's not just the sound of comfort, it's the unmistakable cadence of someone who's been here before. A maternal authority shaped not by theory, but by lived experience. 6 children of her own, dozens more fostered through Chicago's overburdened but quietly heroic social services system. Her voice carries the textured gentleness that veteran caregivers develop over years, calm enough to ease panic, firm enough to instill trust, yet soft enough to never demand more than a child can give. She kneels with reverence beside Ethan, never breaching his fragile sensory boundary. She doesn't touch, doesn't coax, she simply becomes available, present, in the way that makes children feel safe without even knowing why. To Mia, the nod Mrs. King offers is more than gratitude. It's communion, not the sterile politeness exchanged between strangers, but the deep, wordless respect between women who have dedicated their lives to understanding children not through control, but through connection. "That was beautifully done, dear," Mrs. King says, and though her words are simple, their weight is enormous. She's not just commenting on Mia's technique, she's acknowledging something sacred. Mia saw Ethan as a person, not a problem. Across the room, Jonathan Clark remains still, frozen in the liminal space between his public role and private failure. He watches his son take the cup of water from Mrs. King and remain close to the young woman who just minutes earlier had been a stranger. The same boy who normally needs half an hour to regulate after sensory overload is now calm, grounded, in less than 5 minutes. No therapy session. No specialists, just presence. The investors, initially tight-lipped and wary, begin to stir. One older man with silver hair and a weathered face approaches Jonathan. There's a quiet shimmer of emotion in his eyes. "That young lady," he says, voice cracking slightly, "just showed your whole company what real inclusion looks like." He glances toward Ethan, then back at Jonathan, "My grandson Noah. We've spent years trying everything money could buy. What I saw today, that wasn't therapy. That was understanding. That was love made visible." A woman standing nearby, dressed in tailored business wear and holding a sleek leather portfolio, adds softly, "My daughter was diagnosed 2 years ago. I've grown so cynical about corporate diversity talk. It always feels like branding, not truth. But if this is the kind of leadership your company nurtures, then you're building something no other firm can replicate." But the truest testament comes not from a financier or executive. It comes from Ethan. As the lobby's energy slowly returns to its polished hum, Ethan turns to Mia, his voice small but sure. He raises his hands, mimicking her earlier breath pattern. "4 counts," he says, just 2 words. But they land like thunder in Mia's chest. They are the first words he's spoken all day. "4 counts makes it better," he says again, eyes searching hers with a flicker of trust that wasn't there before. Mia nods, her voice tight with held-back tears. "4 counts makes it better," she repeats, her throat thick. This isn't just a milestone. It's a moment of mutual recognition, the sacred alchemy that happens when 2 souls see each other clearly for the first time. Mrs. King, standing nearby, watches with the quiet joy of someone who has spent a lifetime building bridges for others to walk across. She reaches into her cardigan and pulls out a small, neatly wrapped bundle. Homemade almond cookies, the only treat Ethan consistently accepts after overloads. "For later," she tells him, placing them within reach. She doesn't push, just offers. Then she turns to Mia, slipping a folded piece of paper into her hand. Later, when Mia opens it, she finds a message written in careful, looping script. "Kindness is fluent in every language. Thank you for speaking my boy's language today." Later that afternoon, during the company's catered lunch, Mia finds herself seated at a table with other caregivers and staff, support people essential to the fabric of the day, yet invisible to the corporate machine. From this vantage point, she quietly observes the people who move the levers of power. Jonathan Clark is working the room again. Smooth, magnetic, flawlessly prepared. But Mia's trained eyes catch what others miss. The subtle tightness in his shoulders, the restless way his eyes flick toward the corner where Ethan now sits with Mrs. King. The way he flinches, almost imperceptibly, when another father brags about his daughter's Ivy League acceptance. Mrs. King joins Mia with a sigh and a plate of those same almond cookies. At 65, she walks with the strength of someone who's never had the option to rest, yet chooses tenderness over weariness every time. Her cardigan is worn, lovingly mended at the sleeves, her silver hair pinned neatly, her eyes full of oceans. 40 years I've been with children like him, she says softly. Started as a speech therapist, now more of a grandma, I suppose. She smiles, setting the plate between them. I've seen everything from high-end therapies to state-mandated interventions. But what you did this morning, she pauses. That wasn't a method, that was translation. Nia blushes. Praise still makes her shy. She fiddles with the corner of the paper in her lap. I have a younger brother. Danny? He's autistic. He taught me that some of the loudest conversations don't use words. Mrs. King nods, her face gentle. Mr. Clark, he loves that boy more than life. But love and language aren't the same thing, are they? Her gaze moves to Jonathan, who now crouches awkwardly beside Ethan, unsure how to bridge the growing space between them. He's tried to understand Ethan through data and diagnostics, but maybe what he needs is someone who already speaks the language. As the afternoon wears on, the contrast becomes painfully stark. Jonathan Clark, master of vision, architect of fortunes, can't coax his son into the family games. Come on, buddy, he pleads. Try the climbing wall, just for a minute. But Ethan, overstimulated and withdrawn, shakes his head and turns away. The synthetic scent of catered food, the shrill laughter of dozens of neurotypical children, the constant buzz of conversation. It's too much, too fast, too loud. Jonathan's smiles grow tighter, his words more strained. The laughter of the other families feels like a mocking chorus. From the sidelines, Oliver Grant, the company's sharp-suited HR director, watches with growing tension. At just 34, Oliver's made a name by mastering appearances. The IPO is 6 weeks out. Every detail matters. We need to manage this, he whispers to Jonathan. Maybe Ethan should go home with Mrs. King before the next round of investor presentations. But Jonathan's reply is raw. He's my son, Oliver. If I can't even connect with him during this, what kind of man does that make me? The question isn't rhetorical. It's a wound, one that no investor pitch or quarterly projection can dress. Across the room, Mia watches it all, the boy sinking deeper into his internal world, the father flailing for a lifeline that doesn't exist in any of his playbooks. And in Jonathan's face, she sees something achingly familiar, an echo of her own parents, years ago, when Danny first began slipping behind glass no one could see through, before they understood that different doesn't mean broken, before they realized that there's something different doesn't mean broken. And then, at 5:30 a.m. the next morning, when the city is still cloaked in gray and most people are dreaming of deadlines and deliveries, Mia's phone rings. And everything changes. The phone rings in the muted silence of pre-dawn, slicing through Mia's sleep like a warning bell. The number is unfamiliar but bears a Chicago area code. When she answers, the voice on the other end is unexpected, deeper than she imagined, laced with exhaustion, and taut with something raw and urgent. Miss Sanders, this is Jonathan Clark. I'm sorry to call so early, but I need to speak with you. Can you meet me in my office, 7th floor, northwest corner, 7 o'clock? Before she can reply, the line goes dead. Mia stares at the phone, heart pounding with dread. Her mind races. She knows she's about to be fired. Whatever happened yesterday, however sincere, must have crossed unseen boundaries, violated corporate policies she never even knew existed. She dresses with care, a soft blouse tucked into the navy blazer her mother bought her for graduate school interviews, small pearl earrings her grandmother's. If this is the end, she'll meet it with dignity. In the lobby of the Clark building, Mrs. King is already waiting. Her silver hair, as always, is pristine. She hands Mia a paper cup with both hands. Chamomile tea with honey. The warmth of it softens Mia's tremble. You look like you're walking into a firing squad, dear, she says with a knowing smile. But let me tell you something about Jonathan Clark that Forbes never prints. He's a good man who forgot how to ask for help. Yesterday you gave his son something money couldn't buy. Trust me, you're not here to be dismissed. The elevator ride to the 47th floor feels eternal. Outside the glass, the city awakens in slivers of gold and silver. The lake glistens with the illusion of endlessness. But inside Mia's chest, the possibility feels more like a trapdoor than a promise. The conference room is built like a fortress of prestige. Floor-to-ceiling windows gaze across 3 states. A mahogany table stretches nearly the entire length of the room. On the walls, photos of Jonathan Clark with presidents, innovators, and icons. But it's the people in the room that make Mia's breath stutter. 12 executives, men and women in impeccable suits, eyes sharp with curiosity and caution, and on the screen behind them, security footage from the day before. She sees herself kneel beside Ethan, hears her own voice, soft and rhythmic, guiding a child back from the brink. She watches the ripple of awe pass through the lobby crowd as chaos transforms into calm. Jonathan rises. His mask of confidence is intact, but only barely. Beneath it, cracks reveal the weary, aching truth of a father pushed to the edge. "Ladies and gentlemen," he says, "this is Miss Mia Sanders, the woman in that footage. Yesterday she accomplished something our team of pediatric specialists, behavioral consultants, and crisis professionals haven't managed in 7 years." He turns to Mia, and in his voice, tightly controlled, there's a note of something unexpected. Humility, hope, pleading. "Miss Sanders, would you explain to my team what you did?" All eyes shift to her. She feels the room close in. The weight of expectation crushes her chest. But then she remembers Danny. Remembers Ethan's voice, quiet but clear. 4 counts makes it better. And she stands taller. "Mr. Clark," she begins, her voice steady, "your son wasn't having a behavioral meltdown. He was having a neurological response. That sound feedback, it triggered his nervous system's alarm. His body wasn't misbehaving. It was defending itself from a perceived threat." She breathes. The words come easier now. "What I used is called co-regulation. Instead of trying to stop his behavior, I helped his nervous system match mine. The breath pattern, my tone, my posture, it all tells the brain, you're safe now." That's not pseudoscience, it's neuroscience and lived experience. Oliver Grant, the HR director, shifts forward. His tone is cool, skeptical. "Ms. Sanders, with respect, you're a part-time nanny. You don't hold any formal autism credentials. What you're describing, it's not standard practice." Before she can respond, Jonathan's voice cuts through the tension, firm, unwavering. "Oliver," he says, "in 7 years of working with experts, no one has helped my son recover from sensory collapse in under 30 minutes. Yesterday, this young woman brought him back in under 5. He looks at Mia now, and the room stills. "I don't care about titles. I care about what works." Silence falls, deep and heavy. Mia realizes this is more than a meeting. It's a reckoning. Then Jonathan continues, softer now, but somehow stronger. "Ms. Sanders, I want to offer you a consulting position. 6 weeks. You'll work directly with me and with HR to shape what we're calling the Neuro-Inclusive Workplace Initiative. Your official title would be Neuro-Inclusive Family Consultant." He pauses, and what he says next reshapes the air in the room. "Your job would be simple. Teach me how to talk to my son. There is no corporate polish now, no CEO sheen, just a father broken open. An end like Robert. I built a company worth $8 billion, he says, but I can't have a 5-minute conversation with my child without triggering a meltdown. I can predict global market shifts months in advance, but I can't read my son's eyes." The words are not a confession. They're a surrender. "I'm not asking you to be Ethan's therapist," he finishes. "I'm asking you to be mine. The proposal is clear. $50,000, 0 cents, for 6 weeks. A potential full-time role pending the IPO's success. And something far more valuable than salary, a chance to shape the future of inclusion in corporate America. Around the table, the shift is visible. What was once skepticism becomes intrigue, curiosity, even respect. Sarah Chun, the CTO, leans forward, the first to speak from the executive side. But Mia's attention drifts, for just a moment, back to Ethan, to his hands rising and falling in rhythm, to his small voice breaking through the static. And she knows this isn't just a job offer. It's a calling. Sarah Chun is the first to speak. Actually, she says, her tone thoughtful, this aligns perfectly with our inclusion goals for the IPO. A documented, real-world neurodiversity initiative could differentiate us in a way no product ever could. But it's Jonathan's next words that mark the true turning point, not for the company, but for himself. He says quietly, "Yesterday, you gave me something I believed I'd never have again. You gave me hope that maybe I can still learn to be the father Ethan deserves." His voice falters for just a beat. How did you know what he needed?" Mia doesn't answer from intellect. She answers from the place where her healing and purpose were born. "Because, Mr. Clark, 7 years ago, my little brother Danny taught me that love isn't about speaking the same language. It's about being willing to learn a new one." And just like that, the room changes. For the next hour, the conference room, normally a shrine to strategy and data, transforms into a sanctuary of insight. There are no slides, no projections, only Mia, standing with a quiet strength earned through years of seeing what others miss. She explains that Ethan's stimming isn't a behavior to fix. It's a signal, a lifeline. She walks them through how lighting, sound, and spatial design either inflame or soothe the nervous systems of neurodivergent minds. She shares data that reveals how people with sensory processing differences often excel in pattern recognition, attention to detail, and abstract reasoning, the exact skills that drive innovation in tech industries. But more than any graph or a journal excerpt, she teaches them to reframe autism, not as a disorder to manage, but as a difference to respect, accommodate, and sometimes even celebrate. By the end, Jonathan has filled 3 legal pages with notes. The executive team has set implementation deadlines. Mia has agreed, tentatively, nervously, to 6 weeks of consultation. 6 weeks to prove that empathy is not just kindness, it's strategy. That understanding can build bridges stronger than any resume or title. As the room empties, Oliver Grant approaches her. His usual steel demeanor has softened, but only slightly. "Miss Sanders," he says, low and measured, "let me be clear. This IPO involves billions of dollars. If this initiative becomes a PR liability, if it reflects poorly on Jonathan's leadership, there will be consequences. For everyone." "Analyzes, process." Mia meets his eyes, her heart pounds, but her voice doesn't waver. "Mr. Grant," she says, "the only liability would be ignoring the extraordinary potential that's been sitting in your lobby for 7 years, just waiting for someone to notice." 3 weeks later, the transformation is undeniable. What began as crisis control morphs into a deep collaboration. Jonathan, once ruled by urgency and precision, now learns the delicate art of anticipation. He starts announcing transitions 5 minutes early, allowing Ethan's mind to prepare. He begins using visual schedules, replaces verbal demands with illustrated choices. He listens not just to words, but to rhythms. Most importantly, he stopped seeing Ethan's stimming as something to correct. He starts decoding it. He learns that finger tapping signals joy, that toy line formations aren't compulsion but creativity. And then comes the night that changes everything. It's a quiet Thursday. Jonathan walks past Ethan's room and freezes. The floor is covered in Legos, arranged in a pattern that seems random until, slowly, it isn't. Hey, Jonathan kneels, watches. Gradually, he sees it, a precise visual representation of prime numbers, crafted in color-coded bricks. Ethan, he whispers, can you show me how you figured this out? For the first time, Ethan doesn't flinch. His explanation is halting, but rich. It takes effort, patience. But at the end, Ethan looks directly into his father's eyes and says, "Do you want to build the next sequence with me?" Jonathan smiles, his chest tight with wonder. "Yes," he says, "more than anything." For 2 hours, they build not just with Legos, but with language, with understanding, with shared silence. And just like that, Jonathan realizes this is the most important business meeting of his life. That connection ripples outward. Jonathan begins speaking publicly about his journey, not as a hero, but as a student. Employees listen, investors take note. The Neuro-Inclusive Workplace Initiative, once a footnote in crisis strategy, becomes a headline. Forbes publishes a cover story, "The CEO Who Learned to Listen." Harvard Business Review features Mia's work as a case study, neurodiversity as a competitive edge. Applications at fintech labs surged by 340%, especially among neurodivergent candidates who for the first time see a place that might see them back. But the real changes unfold quietly. Mrs. King shares that Ethan now asks when Mia's teaching day is. Sarah Chun admits her daughter's diagnosis feels less like a shadow now. Even Oliver Grant, once the harshest critic, stands up in a leadership meeting and says, "I was wrong. This initiative didn't just change our image, it changed our thinking." Then comes the final test. 6 weeks after that pre-dawn phone call, the IPO launch rehearsal is held at the historic Palmer House Hotel. The ballroom is elegant, the stakes immeasurable. Ethan, at his own request, will appear during Jonathan's presentation. It's a risk. Any distress could unravel months of planning. But Mia notices the details, the softer lighting, the noise-canceling headphones tucked discreetly into seat pockets, the quiet room just off stage, ready for retreat if needed. When Jonathan steps onto the stage, the room hushes. He looks different. Still powerful, still magnetic, but now gentler, grounded, changed. 6 weeks ago, he begins, I thought leadership meant having all the answers. He pauses. Today, I want to introduce you to my teacher. Ethan steps onto the stage with practiced grace, his small fingers curled around a tablet displaying the visual schedule Mia created just for this moment. He wears noise-canceling headphones, not to shield, but to steady, a quiet signal that his needs are not limitations, but part of his path. The audience expects the typical polished executive moment, a charming child appearing briefly for optics. What they witness instead is something that dismantles every expectation. Ethan pauses at the mic, glances at his tablet, then, in a voice both steady and soft, he begins. My name is Ethan Clark. I have autism. My brain works differently than most people's brains. And that's not broken. It's different. Different is good. My dad is learning my language, and I'm learning his. Thank you. The silence that follows is electric, brief, reverent, and then the applause rises, not polite, not performative, but thunderous, sustained, real. Yet the moment that etches itself deepest comes as Ethan prepares to leave the stage. He stops, turns, looks at his father, and opens his arms. It's the first time he has ever initiated a public embrace. Jonathan doesn't hesitate. He kneels, and in front of 800 people, investors, executives, media, The two hold each other, father and son, heart to heart, a new definition of success written not in profits but in presence. 6 months later, Mia stands in a very different Clark home. Gone are the cold minimalist lines once designed for magazines. In their place, warm light that shifts with the sun, walls with tactile patterns, quiet corners with blankets and headphones. It's not a showroom, it's a sanctuary. More importantly, it's full. Families sit on cushions while Ethan, now 9, demonstrates his latest Lego project. Parents have come from across the country, drawn by word of a home where autism is not just managed but embraced. Jonathan enters the room holding a tray of Mrs. King's almond cookies and chamomile tea, his body no longer braced for chaos. His gaze no longer scans for problems, but listens, like a conductor, tuning into the rhythm of the room. I used to think inclusion meant trying to change Ethan, he says, his voice clear, grounded. But the most important thing I've learned is that it's not about changing your child to fit the world. It's about expanding your world to fit your child. And when you do that, the world becomes more beautiful. For everyone. Parents cry quietly. Some, like the mother of an 8-year-old named Lucy, weep openly. For years, she says, therapists told us to stop Lucy's stimming, said she'd never learn otherwise. But watching Ethan here, maybe we weren't supposed to fix her. Maybe we were supposed to learn from her. Across the room, Ethan hears it. He walks over, deliberate, gentle. His voice carries not innocence, but truth. Dimming helps my brain feel organized, he says. It's like tuning a radio so the sound gets clear. Your daughter's brain is smart. Let her be smart her way. Silence follows. Not the awkward kind, but the holy kind. The kind that follows wisdom. Later, as families trickle out, Ethan leads Mia to the kitchen, the same one where Mrs. King once handed her tea and whispered that kindness is fluent in every language. Now, the countertops have textured panels. The lighting is warm, responsive. A small nook serves as Ethan's regulation corner, filled with stones, fidgets, and soft places to land. But the real transformation is quieter. Jonathan announces transitions 5 minutes early now. A visual schedule hangs by the fridge, helping the entire family stay grounded. Ethan's artwork is proudly displayed, not despite its abstraction, but because of it. And today, Ethan has a gift. He hands Mia a hand-bound book. The cover is a geometric pattern, a collaboration between Ethan and a local artist. The title reads, The Language of Understanding, a Guide, by Ethan Clark and his teaching team. Inside are drawings that depict emotions, routines, stimming strategies, all with child-friendly explanations. Diagrams of the 4-count breathing, illustrations of safety bubble positioning, pages filled with clarity born not from textbooks, but from lived truth. This page, Ethan says, turning to a drawing of storm clouds, turning into sun, is about meltdowns. Big feelings always end. Another page. This one's about stimming. See the colors? They get brighter when the person flaps their hands. That's because stimming makes feelings more organized. On the last page, dedication. For Mia, who taught Dad that different is not less. For Dad, who learned to listen with his heart. For Mrs. King, who makes the best cookies for hard days. For everyone learning new languages of love. Jonathan reads over Mia's shoulder, his voice thick. You know, he says, the IPO made us $8 billion, 0 cents. Forbes called it one of the most successful launches in tech history. But this, he gestures to the book, to Ethan's smile, to the quiet, confident rhythm of a household that finally understands itself. This is the real profit. Mrs. King, ever timely, enters with another plate of cookies. Money builds companies, dear, she says. But understanding grows souls, and souls, once grown, touch other souls in ways no dollar ever could. As golden light pours through the windows, they become a portrait of what is possible, 3 generations bridging difference with compassion. It is 3 generations of misery, extracurrent hopelessness, defeat, and possible. Mrs. King, the steady elder. Jonathan, the humbled father. Ethan, the radiant child. And Mia, the quiet hero who translated love. As Mia gathers her things, now the director of neurodiversity innovation at FinTech Labs, Ethan tugs gently at her sleeve. Eye contact steady, his voice a whisper and a roar all at once. Mia, thank you. For teaching Dad that my brain isn't broken. For showing him that love speaks every language, even quiet ones. And for helping other kids' parents learn our language too. He pauses, his breath in rhythm with hers. Because now, more kids get to feel safe being themselves. The camera pulls back. Through the kitchen window, the skyline shimmers. Each light a promise that somewhere out there, another child might soon be understood. And it all began with 4 simple counts of breath.